of the UK Vaccines Task Force says there is a possibility that there could be a vaccine rollout in the UK before Christmas, but that an early 2021 launch is more likely. Kate Bingham says she's optimistic that the vaccine will be approved for use soon and that the UK is well positioned. She's been telling me that the first COVID vaccines could be similar to the current flu jabs in nature, giving a short initial burst of protection, but it would need it to be updated regularly.
They're not 100% protective, and they don't provide protection for more than several months to a year. So I think what we're going to end up with is something where we can manage this disease. We need to stop it from being a lethal disease that is causing a global shutdown to something that is manageable, where we can both prevent infection as well as reduce the severity of symptoms if infection actually takes place.
When do you think we will get the information that we need on whether vaccines are safe and whether they work?
So I wish I could give you a firm answer. What I can say is that the front-running vaccines will have completed or have completed their clinical trial enrolment. So by November, we should have at least the front-running vaccines, which does include Oxford, also includes the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, where they will have completed the enrolment. The bit that we don't know, or the two parts we don't know, is whether or not there have been sufficient infections in those clinical trials to be able to statistically show that people who've received a vaccine are protected versus those who haven't. And of course, the holy grail question is, do the vaccines work? But I have to say, I'm optimistic. I think it's important that we do manage expectations, that this is not likely to be a one and done, a silver bullet that will put everything back to rights immediately. But I do think, based on the data that's been generated so far, we have room to be optimistic, and we mustn't rush it. We need to ensure that everything is done safely and properly. And we're in a good position. The UK is well positioned.
But when realistically can people expect to be offered vaccinations in the UK?
Well, if the first two vaccines, or either of them, show that they're both safe and effective, I think there is a possibility that vaccine rollout will start this side of Christmas. But otherwise, I think it's more realistic to expect it to be early next year.
And who would be given them first as a priority?
That's a matter for the Department of Health, who works with an expert committee called the JCVI, which are the Joint Committee of Vaccination Immunisations. And they advise the government on priorities and who should get it first. And they've put on their website their initial advice or prioritisation, obviously in the absence of the final clinical data, so that advice may change. But they've prioritised care home residents and care home workers, frontline healthcare workers, and the over 80s. And then their priorities go down roughly in age order, including those adults with severe underlying diseases.
Is there not a risk, though, in rushing out to give vaccines to people who are already quite vulnerable, if they're old or have got health issues, given this vaccine has been produced incredibly fast? We just don't know what the long-term consequences are, do we? A bit like we didn't know about long COVID at the beginning.
So, as I said, the safety trials have not been compromised. They've not been rushed. No changes to the high standards of safety have taken place in the development of these vaccines. So I'm not concerned that the safety has been compromised.
But we don't know what the long term. We might be able to do initial tests on side effects, but we don't know what the side effects are in a year or 5 years or 10 years, do we?
No, we don't know, and of course we need to run those studies to see. But
it's going to take 10 years.
That's why the JCVI has recommended that the people that receive the vaccines are those who are most at risk
Guinea
from
pigs.
infection. So, yes, we don't know what the consequences might be in 5 or 10 years. But the fact is, if these vulnerable people have risk of severe mortality or morbidity if they get the infection, then I think that's something that each individual person and the government and JCVI need to consider. But you do need to think about, if you take the mRNA vaccine, which is the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, that is in the body for a very short time before it's degraded. So biologically, I think it's unlikely there are going to be lots of long-term consequences. But of course, we can't say that until we have actually run the studies and look at them.
And Given there is always that risk, I mean, can you explain for me briefly what the different vaccines are? Because they work with different mechanisms, don't they? Or are any of them live, jabs? As we know, sometimes you get a reaction to the flu jab, don't you?
Yes, so we've got the two front-running vaccines, the two classes of vaccines. One is a adeno vaccine, so that's a virus that gets into the cells and gets then the spike protein translated by the cells, and that's how you make the protein. So they're all different ways of exposing the body to a viral COVID protein. So there's a viral, the adenoviruses are the same as the Oxford, that's what they are. So that's a viral approach. The mRNA approach, instead of bringing in the genetic material with a virus, is literally just injected in. So then again, the body makes their own protein.
Jesus.
You could just have vaccines where you just inject the protein itself. So that's what the Novavax vaccine is, together with the GSK vaccine. And then you can also have inactivated whole virus. So that is where you literally grow up COVID-19, render it inactive, and then that is the vaccine itself. So they're all different ways of exposing the immune system to the viral proteins in order to elicit an immune response. And we don't know which of any of these vaccine formats are going to be the most potent at stimulating the strongest immune response, or which may provoke the longest lasting immune response.
Which one is the safest?
In the UK, what we've done is to build a portfolio of 6 different vaccines across these 4 different formats, so that we can maximise our chances of having a successful vaccine that will work for everybody. And it may be that different vaccines will work for different people. So the older people's immune system is not as robust, it's got tired, compared with a young person's, healthcare worker's immune system. So it may be that we will have different vaccines for different people.
That is Kate Bingham.